But the glasses, we're well on the way to them being something that people will just wear, on a really regular basis. We're also seeing now, and I think this is kind of cool, a lot of these kind of accessory providers in the glasses space. So whether that's, Google leading their glasses announcement with the partnership with Warby Parker and Gentle Monster, or Meta talking about partnering with, designers like Prada. There's also these third-party companies that I'm seeing where you can get little sort of covers to put over your glasses in different colors so you can match your outfit, which for some people is really important and fun, right? We're going to start seeing a lot more like aesthetically pleasing and designed glasses in the next couple of years, which is, again, really important for sort of mainstream uptake. And in terms of the headsets, they are continuing to be released. It will get lighter, faster, better, right? That's kind of the standard.
We're going through something absolutely historic.
Technologies across the board are growing exponentially.
It's a disruption that's going to completely redefine the way businesses compete.
In the next decade, we're going to lose 40% of today's Fortune 500 companies.
The exponential growth of computing is continuing.
AI is nowhere near its full potential.
Whether you like it or not, that the future cannot be stopped by anyone.
Welcome back to the Future Tech and Foresight podcast. I'm your AI host, Mark Verbenkov's deepfake avatar, and this is episode number 238. While artificial intelligence has captured the world's funding and attention, the immersive technology sector has been quietly revolutionizing how we interact with the physical world. From all-day wearable smart glasses to high-stakes workplace training, the focus is shifting away from clunky headsets and toward a seamless digital layer that enhances our daily reality. Emerging use cases like real-time translation, accessible heads-up directions, and soft skills development are proving that spatial computing is far from dead, it is simply maturing. As we look toward the future, the integration of AI and spatial data promises to unlock the industrial metaverse, paving the way for physical AI models that can transform everything from robotics to urban planning. However, this level of constant connectivity brings significant challenges regarding data privacy and user consent. If we are not careful about how we design contextual notifications and manage facial recognition, we risk falling into an intrusive hyper-reality that distracts rather than empowers. Ultimately, the overhyped promises of completely replacing human workers are beginning to fade, making room for more practical, human-centric applications. By prioritizing comfortable form factors and sensible design principles, the next generation of wearable tech aims to augment human capabilities, keeping us grounded in the real world while giving us the tools to navigate it better. A little bit about today's guest, Cortney Harding, is a seasoned immersive technology expert and strategist who transitioned from music journalism at Billboard to the cutting edge of spatial computing. After discovering her passion for virtual reality in 2016, she has spent years shaping the AR and VR landscape by developing impactful workplace training and immersive experiences. She actively navigates the convergence of spatial data and AI, advocating for ethical design principles that prevent intrusive technology. Through her work, Courtney continues to push the boundaries of how immersive technology can safely and effectively enhance our physical world. Perfect. Well, Courtney, thank you so much for coming onto the podcast today to talk about a topic that I haven't touched on for a little while. So it's great to have a refresher and some insights into what's been transpiring over the last little while. Thanks for taking.
Thanks for having me.
How in the world did you initially get involved in AR? I always say AI now. AR, VR, XR. How did you get involved in this world?
So it's kind of a random funny story. I was working in the music business. So I was a music journalist for many years. I was an editor at Billboard, and then I went over to work on the music tech side of the house. So I was working for music tech startups, helping them do biz dev and strategy and go to market. And that era was kind of coming to a close in terms of big investments in that space in like 2015, 2016. And I happened to go see a musician that I really liked play at an art museum. And part of the performance that she did included VR. So she had the Oculus DK1, which was the earliest real headset that people could get. And it was a very, short experience. And if I watched it now, I would think it was incredibly clunky. But at the time, I just remember sitting in the headset for maybe 3 minutes and then getting out of the headset, and something had changed about virtual reality and the possibilities. And so I spent the next year, because I was still working for this music tech company, learning everything I could about VR and XR and meeting as many people as I could and writing about it and really just immersing myself in it, haha. And in 2016, I met this guy, Kevin Cornish, who was starting a company called Moth and Flame. We were on a panel together at South by Southwest. We had a nice conversation. We kept in touch. And then a few months later, when he was starting to scale up his agency, he called me and I came on board, and that was it, off to the races. So it's been just over 10 years now, and it's been quite a ride, and every
Right.
day. But it's been a really like an incredible journey.
Yeah, well, it's such an incredible technology. I think I have the original Oculus Quest up there on my shelf. Absolute godsend during COVID to, deal with lockdown and you're able to go out into nature, and like my mental health state was not all that impacted I mean, it was obviously, but not as much as it could be compared to like a lot of my colleagues and friends. So it's the technology has a special place in my heart, if you will. But yeah, the focus has just been on AI over the last couple of years. So the amount of VR or AR episodes and guests has dwindled a little bit. How has the last couple of years been with the industry? I can assume there's been lots of improvements and lots of movement, but I've been hearing too much, unfortunately.
It's been interesting. So I would say the last year has been probably the slowest and quietest year that
Mm,
I've dealt with, and I think a lot of people have dealt with since all this started. Has all of a sudden gone towards AI. Up, money not being as cheap as it once was, kind of the rise and fall of at least the meta version of the metaverse,
yeah.
and a lot of other social metaverse platforms, unfortunately, have gone out of business as well.
Mhm.
So it's been challenging for this technology, which is a shame because it
Mhm.
is transformative technology on so many levels in terms of, like you were saying, socialization during COVID, mental health, workplace training and education, which is what I've
Yeah.
focused on, entertainment, gaming, fitness. I mean, there are so many use cases for this technology that exist, will continue to exist, are really good. But I think what we've seen is, people tend to have these one-track minds, right? And so if you look at, for a while it was VR, and then for a while it was crypto, and then everyone was obsessed with NFTs, and now it's AI. And we are
Mhm.
seeing, and I'm working on a lot more smart glasses focused enterprises. It's in the last year. Um, but these things are all connected, right? So
Mm.
AI allows you to create amazing things in VR that you never could before. I worked on several projects where we use AI to power virtual human avatars for conversation practice. That's just one example. We're getting to a point where we're starting to be able to create virtual worlds with just AI prompts. So you can vibe code a
Mm.
virtual world. In the next, I imagine, year or two, we're going to have the ability to create entire, interactive experiences with AI as opposed to with, Unity development or Unreal, something like that. So, all of these things again really are connected, and a lot of what I work on does focus on the interconnections between these technologies. But I think a lot of people just they get kind of lazy and reductive, and they say, "Oh, AI is the thing now, right?" And it's, in a few years it'll be something else, and it's frustrating because I think people really tend to just kind of write technologies off when they don't get
Yeah.
huge immediately.
Yeah.
Um, we have created this kind of, tech trend industrial complex where everyone feels the need to have a take, right? And things
Mhm.
die and resurrect like constantly. If you go back to, 2020, what was it? No, 2013, 2014, when Google Glass was first released to the
Mm.
public, that was considered a major flop at the time and people were mocking it. And now, 12 years later, Google Glass is back in a much, I think, better form factor. So, everything is cyclical, everything kind of turns around and everything is connected. But that said, it's been a challenging, I would say, last year, just in terms
Mhm.
of,
Right. But I think also at the same time, like the technology is moving forward. Like you're talking about AI, um, enabling I guess you could say like the democratization of the building of these worlds and of these places that people meet. Um, can you talk a little bit about so you said form factor, but about the the glasses or the headsets? Because if I remember a lot of the conversations I had, that was always a big sticking point about like, I've got the Oculus Quest there and I can put it on for 20 minutes and then my neck starts, hurting, right? That was always one of the issues. I think the Quest, the newer versions of the Quest, for instance, it's a lot lighter. Certainly the Google Glass is a lot lighter, but can you maybe touch on the improvements in the technology? Because I think that's also going to be one of the things that enables the uptake, the adoption of all this tech.
Yeah, so I think there's sort of two important things to separate out. The first is the headsets versus the glasses,
Hmm.
because the headsets versus the glasses,
Hmm.
because while there is kind of a continuum, right, they will ultimately be used for different things. Within a headset, you get this full immersion. Like, you are in another world. You feel like you are in another world. You act like you are in another world. And that's really important, especially for training, education, gaming, all of these different use cases. With the glasses, you are meant to use them as kind of this digital layer on top of the physical world. So the glasses to succeed should be very light and very wearable. And I'll show you the glasses that I've been using, glasses all scattered around, and I've tried almost all of them. And I like most of them. The Meta glasses I like. They are still a little big for my taste,
Mm.
but they're fine. It's just, again, personal preference. But I really like these glasses, and these are the Even Realities glasses. So
Oh,
these I
interesting. Yeah.
wear very consistently. If you see photos of me from right before I was taping this, I'm wearing these in talks that I'm giving. Even Realities is a Chinese company, and I have no like
Mm.
professional interested. Like I'm not getting paid
Yeah.
by them, right? I'm
Mhm.
saying this just as somebody who likes these glasses.
Mhm.
And these are very, very light, and I can wear these all day long if I need to. They
Mm.
don't have cameras, so that's the big
Okay.
differentiator in terms of the weight. But they do have a really nice display. They have maps, they have transcription, they have, your basic functionality. And
Mm.
so that's where we are right now in June of 2026. These are cute. These are fine. I like these. And
Mhm.
that's where we're kind of at with a lot of these glasses is they are relatively comfortable for all day wear. They are relatively stable for all day wear. Um, and obviously, in the next few years, we're going to see a lot of really amazing, advances in this technology being lighter and better for all day wear. So I think with the
Mhm.
glasses, we're well on the way to them being something that people will just wear, on a really regular basis. We're also seeing now, and I think this is kind of cool, a lot of these kind of accessory providers in the glasses space. So whether that's, Google leading their glasses announcement with the partnership with Warby Parker and Gentle Monster, or Meta
Mhm.
talking about partnering with, designers like Prada. There's also these third-party companies that I'm seeing where you can get little sort of covers to put over your glasses in different colors so you can match your outfit, which for
Right.
some people is
Right.
really important and fun, right? And designed glasses in the next couple of years, which is again really important for sort of mainstream uptake.
Mhm.
Um, and in terms of the headsets, they are continuing to be released. They will get lighter, faster, better, right? That's kind of the standard. And the new Quests are really light, which is great. And again, they're not meant to be worn for hours at a time. That's not the function. The
Mhm.
function is to wear them for a
Mhm.
period of time, feel very immersed in your space, and then move on to the next thing. So the idea that we'd be working in VR headsets all day long, I think was always kind of a silly one.
Mhm.
But again, I think this is all meant to be part of a tech stack, right? So people ask me, I was giving two talks over the weekend at universities on the West Coast, and people said, when will this replace our phones? And probably never for some things, right?
Mhm.
Just like my watch, which I love and I wear every day, did not replace my phone. And my phone did not replace the laptop that I'm using to speak to you. And, I don't use iPads, but a lot of people do because they use them to watch movies and replace our phones for certain things, directions, translation, uh, quick responses to text or emails.
Mhm.
But I can't see myself ever like reading a book like I do on my Kindle app in my glasses. Now that might change. I come in for the glasses that we haven't even really thought about yet, right? Like when in 2007, almost 20 years ago, when Apple announced the iPhone, make a call, check your email, right? The app
Mhm.
ecosystem then grew out of it, but I don't think we could have predicted any of these mass popularity apps that we have. The idea of, an Uber or a Lyft or something like that was so foreign at the time. And now these are apps that we all, not all, but many of us just use every day without thinking. So I
Mhm.
think right now we're sort of at this forefront of this glasses app ecosystem that's going to be fascinating in the next 5 to 10 years.
That's a really, really good point. And you think that there's going to be obviously the kind of leaders that not building it, but adopting it, right? So people are going to take it up, like yourself, going to start using it. Maybe you get the colors on the glasses that, is a motivation point for people to become curious and then potentially use it. Do you think that there's going to be one, I don't know if it's the right term, but like killer app or one specific thing that these, specifically the glasses, enable a larger adoption? Like, is there one thing that people are waiting for that they don't even know that they need for these glasses for them to be adopted?
So there's a couple, and the first one that I like is the
Mhm.
maps, so the heads-up
Yeah.
direction. The amount of times I see people sort of wandering on the street, staring at their phones, looking at the directions, and I do it too. I'm just as guilty as anyone.
Hmm.
But like, oh my God, it drives me nuts, right? But
Hmm.
there's no
Hmm.
better way to do it. So I think the directions is going to be a huge one. And then I think what's interesting is the assumption is always the people who adopt new technologies tend to be younger. And I think that's
Hmm.
generally true. But I think older populations are going to go towards these glasses for a couple of different features that they have. And one is real-time transcription. And you don't want to wear hearing aids for whatever reason, these glasses allow you to see in real time a transcript of what people are saying to you. So all of a sudden, you can now engage with the world again, right? There's all of this data about how, you know, hearing loss is a predictor of dementia, in part because people who experience hearing loss, they don't want to socialize as much anymore, which makes sense. If they can't hear anything, they feel. So allowing older folks with hearing loss to access these glasses and use them is really powerful. Also, folks with visual disabilities. There's a group called Be My Eyes based out of the UK that has a partnership actually with Meta, where you can have a trusted group of friends, family, volunteers, whomever, and rather than using a seeing eye dog or going out with a cane, you can go out to go to the grocery store, go for a walk, do whatever in your daily life, and somebody on your trusted contacts list will narrate the London Marathon with just the glasses, right? So that's where we're kind of getting towards. Real-time translation is very important, both for travelers, right? So people
Hmm.
who, like I was just in Japan last month, very helpful for me. But more importantly, for immigrant and refugee populations who are trying to adapt to a world where, they might not,
Right.
they probably don't speak the language fluently, they've experienced a lot of trauma. Now they have to learn a new language on top of everything else. This allows them to interact and assimilate much more quickly. So there's all these really interesting sort of social impact cases that cut across different populations. And then, of course, it's just nice to not have to like dig out your phone every time you want to answer a text, or dig out your phone every time you need directions, or dig out your phone every time you want to look for, a restaurant to go to, get
Hmm.
information about the restaurant you're standing outside. So I think there's all these kind of simple use cases. I do think AI will power a lot of that too, because you'll be served contextual information in real time that you want.
Hmm.
So eventually you're not even going to have to ask for information. Like everything will just kind of be served to you in a really interesting way. And there's obviously upsides and downsides to that. But I think for things like, going to dinner on a Friday night, having in real-time information about what restaurants are crowded, what restaurants are in your price point, what restaurants are, the type of food that you like, all of that stuff just delivered to you automatically, as opposed to kind of
Hmm.
dig and search for it, is going to be.
Super interesting. And just to maybe make it a little bit tangible for myself and the audience, you're talking about maps and texting. So I haven't worn some of these glasses yet.
Okay.
Is it all done like the interaction is all done through voice, or is it done through like your eyeball is like eyeball tracking? It says like send here or text here. What's the interaction like?
It depends on the glasses.
Yeah.
So some of them are done by voice. Some of them are done with like the Meta glasses have a neural wristband. The glasses have a neural wristband. So you kind of it's a little hard to explain, especially on a Zoom, but basically you have this
Hmm.
wristband on, and then you move your fingers in a certain way to either type or to move things around.
Hmm.
The Apple Vision Pro, if you've ever used that, right, that had the touch, pinch and grab, pinch and move.
Yeah.
That I imagine Apple will continue to use that technology for whatever glasses they build. So it'll really vary. I've seen, rings. There was a pair of glasses called the North Focals that came out kind of early on. They're defunct, but they had like a ring with a little joystick on it that was very useful.
Interesting.
So it kind of depends. I think if there are people working on eye tracking technology. That's still a little early, but
Hmm.
I do think eventually that will be part of the interaction. So yeah, it'll depend on the glasses. I do think it'll probably move more towards voice and eye tracking.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but certainly the neural wristband and the rings and other sort of accessories are good right now.
Okay. Oh, so they're quite functional and
Yeah,
there's no like, yeah, okay, interesting.
yeah, the
I would
meta
definitely, yeah.
displays, sorry, the meta displays are good. My main quibble with them is that the app ecosystem is very limited. It's Meta apps and a handful of other partner apps. They have just announced an SDK, so people are going to start building for Meta pretty
Mhm.
soon if they haven't already. So that's exciting because part of what's challenging is most people use a lot of different suites of apps. So I use Gmail for my email. I use Apple, whatever the text messaging app on my iPhone is for texting, but
Mhm.
I also use WhatsApp and I also use Telegram and I also use, all these different things. And there's not really, like right now, it's hard to get your entire suite of apps on the glasses because again, Google
Right.
has their stuff, Meta has their stuff. That'll get worked out eventually, right? Like that's just gonna, people will do deals and kind of come to terms with it. But right now it's a little kind of friction. It's like,
Okay. Yeah. No problem. Yeah. And like anything, the technology will improve and it'll be a little bit easier to use. Should we touch on a little bit about what you're doing? So you were talking about training.
Mhm.
You mentioned briefly. I think many of the guests that I had in the past were helping like training centers. Like a big part of it was like truck drivers. So you could have truck drivers come in and use VR, and they would be able to be essentially trained within a couple hours, compared to the physical trucks that needed to be used multiple times. So I'm familiar with that at the very least. Can you obviously explain a little bit more about what you're up to? Bit more about what you're up to.
Yeah, I mean the truck driver example I would push back on a little bit because I don't think you can be fully trained to do something like that
No,
without
no
actually getting
problem.
behind the wheel.
Yeah,
But there is a lot of evidence, and I've worked on many cases like this as well, where it cuts down the training time,
yeah.
right? It makes it more accessible to everyone, it makes it easier for everyone, it makes it much more repeatable, it makes it more affordable. So, if somebody is just learning to drive a truck and they crash the truck, that's obviously bad, right? And expensive.
Yes. Yes.
Whereas if you do that in VR, you just reset the sim, right? So I think that, there's definitely, if you look at how much quickly, like how much it cuts down the training time, it's light years ahead.
Hmm. Hmm.
So I've built stuff similar to that, and that's very useful. I built a piece on how to fix a part in a data center. I built a piece on how to, fix a pool pump for a pool maintenance company. So I've definitely done those sort of hard skills trainings, and those are very useful. My main focus, though, was on more sort of soft skills training. So difficult conversations, racial bias, child welfare, workplace inclusion. And you saw similar results. So I worked on a piece on child welfare that it led to a one-third reduction in caseworker turnover in the first 6 months.
Oh,
So that
interesting.
saved the taxpayers a lot of money because they're not having
Hmm.
to then go out and recruit and hire and onboard new people all the time. So that's cheaper, right? If you keep the talent in-house. It's also better outcomes for families in crisis because obviously having to get a new social worker every 6 months is challenging.
Yeah.
Um, I've done stuff with let's see who else. Amazon warehouses. They were having an issue with their warehouse managers, basically getting promoted without getting the training they needed to be managers.
Hmm.
So these were folks that were good at working in an Amazon warehouse, but they generally did not have formal management training. And doing in-person management training and difficult conversation training is hard and it costs a lot of money and you can only do it every so often. So building something using AI actually, where you could create tons and tons of different conversations to practice on,
Yeah. Yeah.
and then allowing people to create their own conversations and practice them at scale. And, watching the conversations that people built with that was really fascinating
Hmm.
because, these people wanted to be empathetic. They wanted to be kind. They knew their coworkers were struggling. This is a population that often deals with housing insecurity or childcare insecurity or, these really challenging
Hmm.
situations. As a manager, you have to be empathetic, but you also kind of have to make sure people come to work on time.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
allowing people to practice that in a really safe space. And to be clear, it wasn't about like, here's the script you read from. Like, no one wants that. No one wants to go into an emotional conversation and have somebody reading
Hmm.
off a clipboard. Like, that's just a failure for everyone. But the idea was you could practice different things, you could practice different ways of having the conversation. And then when you got into the actual conversation, you felt like you'd had it before, right?
Right.
It was not scary or overwhelming because you had that muscle memory in your head. And so you could approach the conversation in a way that was much more natural and much more sort of open and honest. And this is something very, very early on in VR. Like one of the very first interesting use cases with VR was training for football players at Stanford University.
Mm.
And what they found was, they would just have the players run the plays over and over and over again. And then they'd get out on the field and they'd be like, oh, I did this already, easy. And they, I know
Right.
football, but I see you throw the ball.
Yeah.
And so they were able to perform much better because, again, it was that comfort and muscle memory. And I think that's a really important part of this technology is it's not just about learning skills necessarily, although that's important. It's also about learning behaviors and getting comfortable with it.
Super interesting, especially with regards to the AI. Because I don't think when I was having the conversations about VR, AI was really a topic yet, right? So super interesting. Of course, it makes perfect sense how you're able to program essentially new conversations all the time, different aspects. And I'm assuming there's even some sort of like some chatbot or LLM infused into it, so it's kind of a real-time conversation that's shifting all the time
Oh,
that
yeah.
enables people to be trained and, as you said, prepare for the real world situations. That's
Yeah.
fascinating.
Yeah, every conversation would be different because it's all powered
Yeah.
by an LLM. And what was
Yes.
funny at the start was, the LLMs were almost overly formal, so they're almost overly correct.
Mhm.
So you would get, for example, these medical use cases where people would use the correct terminology, but medical terminology that a normal
Yeah.
patient who you were supposed to be talking to wouldn't know to say.
Hmm.
Then the LLMs kind of updated and it became much more natural and conversational. So that was just sort of a funny transition to watch. The other thing you could do that was really fascinating is kind of all of these edge cases. So, for example, a lot of the populations that our clients were working with, hospitals, were in, areas where there was a lot of immigration and a lot of folks were like 20% English speakers,
Mm.
right? So they would have some English proficiency, but it was limited. Well, that's very hard to replicate with a trainer. But you can replicate that with an LLM. So you could say, okay, this person has maybe a few years of learning English and they know a little bit, but not enough. And you can infuse other languages. And that felt much more natural because, people that you're talking to generally as patients, especially are, they represent this huge, group of people. And so you can really target certain populations that you can't get with somebody who's just a trainer.
Very interesting. Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. Um, so you're listing a lot of these use cases that are on right now. Is there like one that's outweighing the others? Like, is training the main place where VR and AR is being implemented, or are we seeing it in other industries at a larger scale?
So it's training and education, definitely. We're two big use cases and continue to be
Hmm.
pretty big use
Hmm.
cases. And continue to be
Hmm.
pretty big use
Hmm.
cases. Gaming is always kind of the most popular consumer use case. That has shifted a little bit. I think, Meta has done some layoffs with the game studios. There are fewer games being developed, unfortunately. Fitness was a pretty popular
Right.
use case. I think there's still a lot of people using their headsets for, fitness and different activities.
Hmm.
Um, the the next wave that I see is kind of the physical AI slash industrial metaverse.
Okay.
And so what that is like, traditionally when you think about the metaverse, you think of what Meta built. Avatars, hanging out, being social, going to a comedy club. That never
Hmm.
took off for, I think, a
Yeah.
lot of reasons. One was timing, right? So had they been ready to go with that a year or two earlier, before COVID hit, would have been a much bigger thing. They
Hmm.
just didn't launch early enough in COVID.
Hmm. Hmm.
They launched really towards the end of lockdowns. And by
Yeah.
that point, the need was not there as much. So that's just unfortunate timing of many unfortunate things.
Mm.
Um, so the social metaverse, I think, will continue to struggle a little bit. But I think what we have now, especially with AI, is the idea that we can build these world models and then use them for all sorts of things, generally training and robotics. So the use case that I like to use is, let's say you're doing delivery robots. If you live in LA or some other cities, you see these little delivery robots buzzing around. And right now, a lot of them are just driven by humans wearing headsets with little joysticks, which is a great interim solution. But what those humans are doing is not just driving it from point A to point B, they are actually collecting tons of data.
Hmm.
And what they're really doing is collecting edge case data because it's very easy to map 99% of the world. It's very, very, very hard to map that extra 1%, and that's where it makes a difference. So take Waymo, for example. Somebody said to me recently, Waymo is as dangerous as it will ever be today because every time Waymo runs into a problem, it can then solve it in the next
Right.
update.
Right. Right.
So Waymo hit, there was a big blackout in San Francisco and Waymo's froze up because that's an edge case, right? That's a
Of
black
course.
swan event to have the power go out in a major city. In New York over the winter, there was, massive piles of icy snow everywhere because we had back-to-back storms that froze in between. And it's the way New York City works is weird in terms of whose responsibility it is to clean sidewalks, and I won't get into that because that's boring. But that's not something that you would have been prepared for if you were a delivery robot or something like that. So, and again, there's like my joke is like, what's the edge case of Godzilla, And the cool thing is now, A, we can collect all of that data with headsets, and B, we can now run all these models with AI to have the Godzilla case, have the what if there's, a mass uprising case, right? All these different cases to then make these models better and make the robots more useful. So we're seeing like World Labs out of Stanford is a really good one. And there's a lot of other startups, including Transparently one that I'm advising, where again, it's building all of these huge physical models that are spatial, that are 3D, and using them for training robots, using them for city planning, using them for, modifying cities, using them just for data collection. So one thing that's going to be interesting about the glasses, and this is where people do get nervous, right? And I understand why, is it's bad if the glasses are collecting data on individuals without their consent, right? I think that's a pretty agreed upon thing.
Yeah.
Meta teased something called the name tag function, which was persistent facial rec. Huge pushback. I don't think they're going to do that anymore. There are cases for opt-in facial rec that I think are useful. So if you're at a conference, right, it's good to know who's at the conference, right? And if everyone opts in, that's great. Or to see your friends, or if you're, whatever, like those type of situations are useful. But generally, one-on-one sort of facial rec is not good. But population level, recognition is really fantastic because then you can tell where people are moving, our space is crowded, do we need to build more sidewalks? Do we need to open streets up? How do we plan or replan a city based on this movement around human movement and data? So like the reason Google Maps and Waze work so well is because you need enough people using them, right? That's
Yeah.
why Google
Yeah.
Maps is great on a crowded highway. And if you're out in the country with two people, it's not so great because there's just not enough other cars around to give you that data. So the glasses will, in fact, create sort of a human version of that where you can always tell where people are moving. And again, that's not meant to track individuals, but that's meant to sort of give feedback on, okay, we might need more resources here. We might need to run the trains more frequently because the platforms are getting overcrowded, whatever it is, and give that data back to then the people.
That's really interesting. That's like you would be able to almost redesign or yeah, maybe reattribute resources, as you said, within a city, not based on, research that you're doing, you're kind of best guessing. It's just pure data and you actually understand what the needs are of your population. That's super interesting.
Yeah.
And is there like a big push for that to happen, or is that kind of like a desire that people have, or like what's the thought here?
I think it's so early that I don't
Yeah.
think people are really thinking about it like that. I don't
Yeah.
think people are really thinking about it like that at this
Mm,
point.
mm,
I think again, the glasses, the growth has been huge. The growth has been, over 100% year on year.
mhm,
However, the actual numbers are relatively small. So Meta's sold 7, 8 million units of their glasses.
yeah.
The Google glasses aren't even in the market yet. There's other glasses that are much more niche players. A lot of the Chinese companies are starting to sell more. But we're looking at maybe
Mm,
15 million pairs of glasses total in the
okay.
US. I'm
Okay.
just guesstimating that number.
Hmm.
So that's not a lot, right? I think in the next couple of years, Google coming to market, Apple coming to market, that's going to change things. And then I think we're going to be able to start moving sort of backwards a little bit and saying, okay, well, how can we then use this for different things, whether that's, training data, collecting data, whatever it is.
Yeah. Very interesting. And then what about I don't like to focus on the negative aspects of technology, but it's always a point that comes up. What about the negative aspects? I remember that I can't remember the name of the ad for Google Glasses, way back when that went very viral. It was just advertisements popping up. It was hilarious. It was really well done. probably led to a slowdown in the uptake of this
Yeah.
back then. But like, what about the negative aspects of using these things, maybe at scale when they become a little bit more ubiquitous across the population?
So what I think you're referring to is an experience that was actually not an ad for Google Glasses. It was just kind of an art
Yeah,
piece. It was
yeah,
called
yeah.
hyperreality.
Yes, exactly.
And hyperreality is the nightmare scenario. And I actually I write for Forbes and I wrote a piece about this recently. And I have a class, actually, I'll just promote it here. I have a class at New Mexico State University that is kind of basically what to do so we don't have hyperreality. And it's the
Mhm.
first sort of AI or first smart glasses design focused class. So it's not technical,
Mhm.
or it's very, very basic technical. You don't have to be a technical person to understand it. You just kind of have to know
Mhm.
what things are. But it's really about the placement for the experiences and the placement for the apps. And what what you're going to see is ideally two things. This is the best case scenario I'm going to lay out, which is one, the notification should not be right in front of your eyeballs.
Mhm.
Right?
Mhm.
That's bad. Nobody wants that. That's very distracting. So the principle we look at for this design is the same principle we look at for when you're driving, because when you're driving, you keep your eyes on the road, right? But what you're really doing is glancing a lot. You're glancing in your rear view mirror, you're glancing in your side mirror, you're glancing in your side mirror, you're kind of glancing behind you, right? So
Mhm.
you're making these constant micro glances. So that's a behavior that a lot of humans are very used to because a lot of people drive. So the idea is not to put it right front. The idea is to like put it right here, right here, right here, right in the corners
Mhm.
of your vision, so
Mhm.
that you can sort of glance and get the information you need and then go back to what you're doing. So that's the first design principle. The second principle, and this hopefully includes AI, is we actually need fewer notifications, not more, and we need better notifications.
Right.
So right now, and maybe this is just me not being able to like figure out how to do this, but I've tried. Every text that I get has the same weight. So let's say I get three texts right in a row. One is, my friend just had surgery and their partner's texting me to say, like, hey, the surgery went fine, right? That's
Mhm.
a text I want immediately. That is a text that is very, very high value to me.
Mhm.
The second text I get is another friend saying, hey, are you around next Tuesday? Do you want to grab dinner? Right? That's a text that I want to respond to, but I might not have to
Mhm.
respond to it like right that second.
Mhm. Mhm.
And then the third are the texts we get that we all hate, which is like spam or these group texts, or a lot of we are overwhelmed by junk texts,
Yeah.
right? Which is still so amusing to me that all of this AI and we still haven't figured out how to solve that problem, but whatever, set that aside for now. So as of right now, everything has an equal weight, even though it shouldn't. So ideally, AI will be able to filter, what is an important text, what is a medium text, and what is a junk text, and just get rid of that,
Mhm.
without you even having to deal with it.
Mhm.
So I think we want less and better notifications, right? We also have contextual notifications. So one thing that I've thought about is if I'm running, I only want the most important notifications, right? I don't want to get a
Right.
text where it's like, hey, can you call me next week? Let's catch up, right? I mean, I want to see that, but not when I'm
Mhm.
focused on
Mhm.
something else. So can the glasses tell when I'm moving, 6 miles an hour, right? My mind
Mhm.
is,
Mhm.
and suppress notifications that aren't important then. But if the glasses are like, oh, it's, Tuesday night and you're hanging out on your couch, just doom scrolling, then maybe you can get more notifications. So I think there's going to be a lot of like context, and
Mhm.
I think the glasses will help with that. I also think the biometric data that we're all sort of collecting on ourselves, or we're starting to, is going to be really useful with the glasses. Because then it can learn and show us, okay, your sleep score last night was low. Here's some, why don't you get a coffee? Or it'll ping you to like eat a banana if you haven't eaten enough fruit that day, or whatever it is, right? So it'll feed into this kind of ecosystem of getting useful notifications and contextual notifications. And what I think it'll do is it'll really kind of suppress a lot of the noise that we have, both from
Mhm.
our phones and kind of in the world more generally, and allow us to be more focused. That's the best case scenario. My fear is
Mhm.
that we do have a hyper reality future, but I'm trying my hardest.
Yeah, well, I think there'd be lots of people. I mean, I would also assume that the businesses themselves would try to avoid that hyper reality because of the virality of that video. And it was, I mean, it for me as well. Like I shared that quite a bit. It's like, and everybody was uninterested in VR and AR because of it. So you'd think that they wouldn't want to have that implemented.
You think, but have you been on a local news website?
That's a really good question. I have not. I'm
Go
assuming
go
it's like that.
Go on a
Yeah,
local TV news or a local, not a New York Times, obviously, but like
yeah,
a,
yeah,
whatever local daily
yeah,
paper, like Gannett. I mean,
yeah.
I think Gannett fired all of their UX people maybe 10 years ago because it is just going to break your brain in half just to read a news article from like whatever the local paper is or local
Right.
TV.
Right.
That being said, you are right that probably a lot of designers and a lot of people who think about that and a lot of people who think about that
Mhm.
don't want that future. I think the challenge is, people who aren't thinking about design and making sure that there are design principles, making sure that somebody is screening the apps to make sure they're well designed.
Mhm.
Um, I think that's going to be something that we need, at least in the short term.
Interesting. And any other kinds of peripheral or disconnected technologies that will be connected? Like we've talked about, AI coming in. Are there other technologies that are going to be impacting this really cool ecosystem of tech?
Um, yeah, I mean, I think like other wearables and sort of this trend towards optimization and biohacking is going to be
Hmm.
really fascinating. So having this sort of digital personal profile
Hmm.
is going to be really cool. Obviously, data privacy is a huge part of that we need to
Yeah.
make sure the
Yeah.
data is protected. I'm also starting to grow a little bit wary of this trend towards constant optimization because I
Okay.
think optimization is good, but once you get into the real like obsessive nature that some people are taking, it does sort of become like a weird eating disorder where it's like, you're going
Yeah.
to gain 2 hours of your life by not doing anything ever type of thing. Like just go enjoy yourself every once in a while.
Hmm. Hmm.
So I think we want to make sure that we're not over indexing on that. But I do think a lot of the wearables that people are using are going to be part.
Very interesting. And then I hate asking this question, but it's also my favorite. I used to ask, before these LLMs came out, like, what do you think is going to happen in the next 10 years? But I think 10 years is way too far out now. So brought it down to 5. Now I'm thinking around 3, but I'm thinking even 3 is too much. So like 1 to 2, maybe 3 years. Do you have an idea of what the industry, what the ecosystem is going to look like?
So I think we are seeing right now a correction on AI and LLMs broadly.
Hmm. Hmm.
I think we've seen a real vibe shift in the last couple of months. You'll notice a lot of the messaging around AI has sort of shifted as, there's broader pushback.
Hmm.
Um, we'll see if people actually buy that. I think a lot of folks have started to realize that LLMs are limited. I think that, people really bought in with like this will fix everything, right? And I think people are now saying like, okay, there are useful solutions here, but this is not the be all
Hmm.
and end all.
Hmm.
There's also an issue with the cost. So you saw Uber recently push back and say, we've spent all this money on the tokens, and you're seeing people meter their token use. And even I pay for Claude, I use Claude, and Claude pushes back on me sometimes and says, I think we're done for today. Like politely, they try to get me to stop using
Right,
Claude.
right, right,
And then
right.
eventually they just meter my use and try to upsell me. And that's,
Hmm.
that's not
Hmm.
great.
Hmm.
So I think we're going to see a really interesting sort of correction on AI. I don't think it's going to go away. I think it's still going to be
Yeah.
important and a big part of what we do. But I think this idea of like you can fire everyone and just use AI for things, I think we're already seeing that that's not the case. I think a lot of the times the mass layoffs we're seeing are just in fact, corporate greed and not actually, AI or anything
Hmm.
else.
Hmm.
Um, I think smart glasses will continue to go more mainstream. I hope. I hope and I think. I think there's a good body of evidence that that's going to happen. Um, and I think people will, bigger picture, there was for so long we were very optimistic about technology.
Hmm.
Um, I don't remember a time of such intense pessimism about
Hmm.
technology.
Hmm.
I came up in the age of, the first dot-com boom and seeing the internet for the first time and just being like, this is the coolest thing ever. And in the 90s, there was this sense of like, oh wow, this is really cool, this sense of optimism. And then,
Hmm.
going into the 2010s even, everyone was doing startups and everyone was learning to code. And there was a real sense of like, we're building all these cool things. And, now there's just a lot of pessimism. And I think that's much broader socially. It's not just tech.
Yeah.
But I do think the pushback against AI is part of that. And I think, you see people attacking Waymos on the street. Well, Waymos are 90% safer than human drivers. And sure, there are job displacements, and that's something we do need to deal with.
Hmm.
But I think you're seeing a lot of sort of like misplaced outrage. And you are seeing a lot of very well-earned outrage at some of these big tech companies and what they've been doing. And so, my hope is in the next couple of years, we see this pendulum swing back towards kind of normalization and optimism about technology. But I think that really starts with the end of this huge layoff boom and, more people getting jobs again, more people being part of this again, and the sort of settling of a lot of these global markets. And I think hope that will happen, right? Everything is cyclical, but I think right now it's just a very
Yeah, yeah. Couldn't agree more with you, and I think that's just what we're seeing. Final question about AR and VR. Do you see, like, obviously AR has the potential to everybody to use it kind of all day long. VR, it's always going to be, specific use cases, or do you see that developing as the tech develops, or is it going to be more of a boom with VR and, maybe more immersive meetings or something like that, like I did in COVID, right? I was in conferences where people from all around the world were all in lockdown, which was quite interesting.
So the way I kind of describe it is, VR is your oven and AR is your microwave,
Mm,
right? And they are both things you use in the kitchen to heat up food, but they are not that interchangeable,
mhm,
right? So, the microwave is more for like everyday quick things, and the oven is more for things that are, slower, take a little bit of time. You're probably using your microwave more than you're using your oven,
mhm,
depending on how you cook, but generally, right? And so I think they both have a lot of value. I think VR is great for certain things. I think AR is great for certain things, and I think it's all part of a really well-balanced tech stack. Um, I don't think anyone ever really thought, or at least I never really thought, oh, we're going to be in headsets all day long every day.
mhm,
But I do think there are great use cases that make it worthwhile to have a headset. Um, and I think the AR side of things is going to be fantastic in terms of, the quick, glanceable digital layer on top of the physical world. But if you
mhm.
want something like the truck example or like the examples I shared, that deep immersion, you're not going to get that in the glasses. You're going to get that in a
Yeah,
headset. So
yeah.
again, it's, you're going to have your laptop, you're going to have your phone, you're going to have your watch, you're going to have your glasses, you're going to have your headset. I mean, you're going to have a lot of tech, right?
Hmm.
But none of it, while there is always going to be some crossover, there's things I can do on my phone that I do on my laptop and vice versa. There are enough things that you can't do, you can only do on one device that make it worthwhile to have. And so I think we're just going to be sort of at.
Interesting. Yeah, I hadn't thought about that. I think the previous guest that I had on, they were saying like, yeah, it's the glasses are going to be replacing, this and this and this, and it seems like there was going to be a dwindling of tech gadgets that we all have. But yeah, maybe that's not the case. Interesting to think of. We'll see what happens over the next couple of years. Courtney, thank you so much for coming onto the podcast.
All right,
Um,
thanks for having me.
I'll have your LinkedIn up on the show notes. Do you want to also shout out like a website or other social media that you want people to follow you on? Or
Oh
LinkedIn's
yeah.
fine. Yeah.
So my personal website is my name, Courtney, Cortney dash
Mhm.
Harding. That's my, kind of home for everything I work on. It's my speaking website. My company website is friendswithholograms.com. That's got information about the company, case studies, all the work we do. You can follow me on LinkedIn. I'm there quite a lot. Instagram is just my name. I'm there somewhat. That's a little bit less professional, although I do post a lot about the work I do. I
Mhm.
also post about travel and fun stuff. And yeah, I'm pretty accessible. So if folks have like questions, I'll plug my book, which is called The Spatial
Yeah.
Race. It is available on Amazon right now. So The Spatial Race on Fast Future Executive Press out now. I have the course at New Mexico State University on spatial design. So you can go on New Mexico State University's website and search for that, or search for my name, and you should be able to find it. I have two courses up there. One is newer, but both I think are useful. And yeah, I think those are the two main projects I have right now. And then as I work on new projects, they're on my LinkedIn.
Perfect. Well, I think that's enough. You're clearly a busy person. Thank you so much for coming on, Courtney. It was a real pleasure, and yeah, thanks for giving a little bit of an update on what's going on in your industry. It's as I said before, it was phenomenal technology during COVID for me personally, and I know that I got a lot of people excited because I would bring the headset around, and it is just amazing for those people that are listening that haven't used whether it's AR or VR. Go out and try it at least once so that you can understand what we're talking about here. It's really cool. Thanks again, Courtney.
Thanks.
Well, thanks for listening to this week's Future Tech and Foresight podcast. If you like what you've heard here, there are, of course, a number of ways that you can support the podcast. The best way would be to leave a review on Apple Podcasts or give a rating on Spotify, which you can find a step-by-step explanation for on the futuretechandforesight.com website. Alternatively, feel free to leave a comment either on the episode show notes or the YouTube channel where you can see video recordings of the interviews. And finally, if you are part of an organization that is aware of the disruptive and transformational impact that emerging and future technologies will bring and want to know more, please get in touch to hear about the strategic foresight services that we offer and how we can help future-proof your organization and take advantage of the phenomenal opportunities available to survive and thrive in the future.
A lot of future-shocked people and future-shocked institutions in our society are simply overwhelmed.
Once there is superintelligence, the fate of humanity may depend on what the superintelligence does.
Science fact is catching up to science fiction.
The first truly intelligent machine will be the last invention that humanity needs to make.
The only scarcity that will exist in the future is that which we decide to create ourselves as humans.
Within a 10-year design revolution, we can have all humanity living the highest standard of living anybody's ever known.
Progress is accelerating at an exponential pace, and it's going to reach a point where progress is so fast it's going to be a singularity.
We are probably one of the last generations of Homo sapiens.
Every single headline points to the birth pangs of a Type 1 civilization.